my, wait, I gotta get to one. Okay. Hello.
Hello,
Edmonton.
everyone. Happy Sunday to everyone.
Oh my gosh, it is so good to see so many friends. At least I saw you before the lights here in Edmonton. And I'm Carissa Halton, of course, and my co-moderator.
I am Serena Ma. Hello, everyone. When I was asked to be part of this debate, they told me to expect a really packed room. And wow, look at this room, Carissa. Can you feel the
Quite
energy
good.
and a bit
Yes.
of a buzz?
Yes.
Thanks again for joining us. I am Serena Ma, and we are your moderators this afternoon. Welcome to the third and final official NDP leadership debate. The debates have been held in Lethbridge, in Calgary, and now obviously here in the capital city. These debates are designed to showcase the candidates to all of you. It's a chance for them to share more information and to help you decide who you will vote for in the next leadership election, June 22nd. I'm a former political journalist. I am now a public relations, communications, and media consultant, and I'm also a mom. All of that means that I am a political watcher. I've been watching this for a very long time, and it's so exciting. It strikes me that what's happening today and on this stage is hugely important. It will chart the course for Alberta politics as we go forward.
Yes. Yes, it will. I mean, I've had a small opportunities to sort of watch this course, watch our party grow. I was a staff person in Brian Mason's caucus office where there was 2 MLAs, Rachel Notley, who you may know, and Brian Mason. And then, of course, when Premier Notley became Premier, I joined her in the office when we were government. And I never thought as a New Democrat I would ever have the opportunity to experience the inside, the curtain walls of government. And you know what? We're going to get to experience that again. I live here in Edmonton. I've raised my family here in Edmonton. We're gathered here on the beautiful North Saskatchewan River, where so many Indigenous people have gathered for centuries and centuries. And I just want to acknowledge here today that we are located in Treaty 6 territory, where the Métis homelands, the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 4 calls home. We acknowledge this land as the traditional territories of many, many First Nations, the Cree, the Dene, the Stoney, the Saulteaux, the Blackfoot. I'm sure that's not all of them today, but we thank them for coming before us and for joining us here today. Now, Marilyn Buffalo is here today to bring us a blessing. But before she sort of makes her way to the stage, we just wanted to introduce you to her.
Marilyn Buffalo was named Morning Sun Woman in a Plains Cree Sundance ceremony. She's the eldest of 11 siblings and raised on the Samson Cree Nation of Musqueam here in Alberta. Her paternal ancestor is Yellow Mud Blanket, brother of Chief Poundmaker, who signed Treaty Number 6 in 1876. From an early age, Marilyn was mentored by her paternal grandfather, John Tutusis, treaty rights activist and founding father of the Federation of Sovereign Indian Nations and the National Indian Brotherhood, now the Assembly of First Nations.
Marilyn Buffalo has brought some really experienced leadership and a recognized voice. She's been in many, many circles over the last 55 years of community development experience in northern, isolated, urban, and rural Aboriginal communities. That work has taken you, I think it seems like, into every political and social and economic issue that there is today, and we just so value you being here with us. I know, yes. Since returning here to Alberta, of course, you've become a trusted advisor to so many Alberta political, corporate, and community leaders. She's currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Nietzsche Institute. Thank you, Marilyn, so much for being here. I want to offer this protocol on behalf of the Alberta New Democrats. Thank you.
I will teach you one word today. Remember this day. Danse.
Danse.
It's not a T, it's not a D. Danse.
Danse.
So you say that to the next person, the Cree person that you meet. Danse. And don't be shy. My name is Morning Sun Woman. In Cree, it's Geeksepaupi Simsko, because I've been known since a small child to be waking people up. 4 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, that's a normal day, and I'm usually the last one in the house to go to sleep. I am the proud mother of Joe Buffalo, who is a nationally and Canadian, also worldwide known skateboarder. I plug in for my kid. If you Google Joe Buffalo, he's world-renowned skateboarder, and it was in this room that he got the Inspire Award a year ago in Edmonton.
Wow.
Born and raised in Edmonton. I also want to mention that, you know, I have a very proud legacy of political leaders. I make no apologies. All good politicians in my family that go way back. And my mentor, one of my mentors, my grandfather, was John Tatusis, who was the founding president of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, a treaty advocate. Yes. So because he was such a great ambassador for us, and remember, this was at a time in the 1920s when we had to take permits in order to leave our reserve community to go sell a bale of hay or cow or whatever. So we lived in a very oppressive state during that time. And so my grandfather made very good friends with T.C. Douglas back in the day. And I tell you that because my grandfather was, my dad's dad, was such a world-renowned, even at the time, Order of Canada recipient, that he, made friends. And because that we believed and we've been taught that is part of our treaty relationship that we agreed to share. And that's very important for all of you to remember in all of the deliberations going forward. And it's important that we as great-grandmothers teach that to our great-grandchildren, because going forward, it's going to mean even more with all of the challenges that we have before us. And I need to not even go there with many of the challenges that we have. Very many life or death issues for not only us and our families, but our communities and the economy of this province and indeed the country. I wish to also take this opportunity that I have worked 55 years of my life, and I just turned 74, by the way. There's no man or woman on 2 legs that's gonna stop me. Going forward, I think we all can work together, we can have fun. My dad taught me, who Korean War veteran, and said, always be #1 in fun. No matter what it is you do, make it fun. So with that, I want to also mention that We as Indigenous women, and I want to say this as former president of Native Women Association of Canada, I served from 1997 to the year 2000, that we have so many challenges as Indigenous mothers and grandmothers in this country, that we are losing our children at such an alarming rate to addictions and drug overdose, suicides, and accidental deaths. I don't mean to bring the spirit down. I want to bring the spirit up. Because in order for us to move forward, we must learn to support each other. It's not just your children or my children, it is our children. We must learn to coincide. We must learn to be friends. We must learn not to be mean. We must learn to be able to ask a question and not get your head bit off. How about that?
Remember that.
I also want to say that I work in a field of addictions where we train addiction counselors. And I understand from reading the papers that this province, this provincial government, is engaging our communities in developing treatment centers. But let me tell you, I've been the CEO for almost 6 years, and I haven't had anybody engage with me. None. No, and the first thing you do, the first phase in the development of every project is you must make sure you have Indigenous peoples that are qualified to be able to work and treat their own people in their own language, in their own culture. We cannot continue. We will not continue this facade of, pretendianism. It doesn't work for us. We've already done the RCAP. We've done the studies in murdered and missing women. We've done the studies on TRC calls to action. In these very halls, we testified and we told them, this does not work for us. We need to find new ways. And anytime you put our people in institutions, particularly healing, when you're dealing with trauma, you must bring that spirit back. And the only way you do that is by engaging with the spirit of the people and their culture and their language. So it gives me great honor, ladies and gentlemen, to accept this protocol on all of you, for all of you, in your families, in your home place, and that whatever challenges you have, that you will overcome. We will overcome, all of us together. But we will only do that if we learn to work with each other with love and respect. I want to thank all of my friends that have put their names forward to lead this wonderful party. And I'll give you my cell number. You can call me anytime, day or night. I know how to move mountains, even when no one knows that you've done that. I want to also mention that, when you put your name forward for leadership, that you are brave. You are brave for putting yourself out there and your families and all the love and support that you need. I've been there. And with that, I don't want anybody, to all of us remember, we need to come back together, and I've overstepped my boundaries, but I want to say one thing. Oilers all the way. But I also want to mention one thing. I'm so old, I remember when the Oilers were called the Alberta Oilers. In the same way, we should remember this is not an NDP party for Edmonton or Calgary or Red Deer. This is an Alberta NDP. Thank you.
Amazing.
Please join me in one heart, in one mind, one spirit. Together we say I want all of you to please, to your heart. Nogtawi na ksewatsin, kintotamat na nos, miomatsihon. Minagahkyogi kwexi sa simios, kintotamat na nos kakiskak. Minagahkyogo kapewita mgoya kwes keksis tamiwi zehtatsik. Tamio kakis moma tuneta ke guista ego mitset kigo etego pepagam skago tse guista koes kexis kamamo atoskeo kahkeo oxis into tamata notes. I pray, Creator, for all of us to unite in one mind and one spirit, and that we will gain power and strength as we work together and walk together forward. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you very much,
That was
Elder
awesome.
Marilyn Buffalo. Your words, I'm sure, have resonated with all of you in the audience. We heard about collaboration. We heard about working together. We heard about leadership. And most of all, the true spirit of what she was saying, let's have some fun. So shall we get to it, guys? In this debate, each candidate will deliver an opening statement. Then we turn the microphone over to you, the audience, to pose questions to the candidates, and they will respond. The members asking questions today have developed their queries with the core values of the party in mind. After that, we as moderators have the opportunity to put the candidates on the hot seat yet again. In this final debate, we have an added new segment where candidates can ask each other questions. And there is an opportunity for candidates to close out the afternoon with closing remarks with their final pitch to all of you.
So, this leadership race is an important vote. And in this debate, candidates will outline the choice that matters most. They will disagree with each other. Hopefully their heads aren't bitten off, right?
Yes.
Yes. They will hold each other to account. Respectful disagreement is an essential part of the democratic process, and we certainly are inviting that to this debate today. But we do, I'm looking at all of you, we're asking the audience to, you don't look like a group of hecklers, are you? I don't know. You can heckle me now if you need to get it all out. Yeah? Can I have some booze?
There you go.
Booze. Bring Sarah out, bring Nahed out, bring Kathleen out. Okay, Jody out. We're gonna get there. We will ask you that if you could even refrain from cheering, applauding, otherwise making noise while the candidates are debating. So they've got certain set times, let them have their way so that none of that time is eaten up by them and their, your adulation. We would, so just applaud when you're after. Marilyn, you got the most claps of anyone who's gonna come onto the stage after this. So now we would like to invite our candidates to the stage. Please give a warm welcome to Sarah Hoffman.
And please welcome to the stage Jody Callahoo Stonehouse.
And I'll invite Nahed Denchi up to the stage, please.
And please give a warm welcome to Kathleen Ganley.
Now, just to be transparent, the location of the candidates on stage and the order that you're going to hear them bring both their opening and closing statements and then the questions that they answer. All of that order was predetermined by random draw. So just so you know.
And candidates, this debate is our chance to hear your stories. We hope to learn even more about you today. Telling a story is a crucial skill, one that leaves a lasting memory and impression with voters. What motivates you in your heart and drives you to become the next leader of the NDP and possibly Alberta's next premier? After these last few months, is there something new we haven't heard before or a renewed perspective to leave a lasting impression and a final appeal to voters?
So when the 3 debates were presented and announced, the party asked you, hey, what do you want to know about all these leadership candidates? And we got 1,800 questions. Many of them actually, there were some common themes, and many of those themes were touched on in the debates that happened in Lethbridge and Calgary. I want to just direct you to those debates because they're on the Alberta NDP YouTube. You can watch those again, and they touch on different questions than what we're going to talk about today. Today, we are really wanting to focus on the core values of the Alberta NDP. It gives the candidates an opportunity to make their closing arguments, shall we say, and essentially it's the final pitch for your vote.
All right, let's get to it. We begin this afternoon with opening statements. Each candidate has 90 seconds on the clock. Naheed Nenshi, please move forward, and the floor is yours.
Tansei, Bonjour. Abawa Stitch, Dada Nastada, Size Etia, Oki Nitsukwa, Mitsuwano Gabesto Chististus. Greetings to all my relations, and hello, Edmonton. It is so wonderful to be here with all of you, and I have to tell you that one of the great pleasures for me, and maybe great surprises for me, over the last 4 months is getting to spend so much more time in this city and getting to appreciate Edmonton even more. The vastly diverse neighborhoods, the incredible art scene, the natural beauty. But I gotta tell you one thing. As a Calgarian, I have learned something I did not know. It is possible to still have hockey in May and June. And thank you, Marilyn, for reminding us that they're the Alberta Oilers. I can get there. But it also has been remarkable watching this movement be built over the last 4 months. From 8,000 active members in January to 85,000 active members as we closed the membership deadline. Doubling, tripling, quintupling, or growing by an order of magnitude by 10 times our membership in every single riding in this province. From north to south, from east to west, rural, urban,
Thank you so
small
much,
communities.
Naheed. Your time is up.
I was just finishing my sentence, and that's what we need to build on.
Thank you so much. Jody Callahoo Stonehouse, please step forward. You have 90 seconds on the clock.
Tansei, it's good to be here. I have to admit, this is the best looking audience we've seen yet. Admittedly, half of you are my relatives. I love you, it's good to be with you. Marilyn, thank you for being such a mentor and such a pillar of advocacy. John B. Tatusis and my chapan, Johnny Callahoo, went to Ottawa together when it was illegal for Indians to go to Ottawa because they saw disparity. And that is why I'm here on this stage. When I was a little girl, my grandfather would take me on the Sturgeon River and we would trap beavers and catch fish. We can't do that anymore because of the phosphates, the nitrogen, and the poisonous blue-green algae. I am here because I want my grandchildren to be able to practice their inherent rights as Indigenous peoples of these lands. And I want to give thanks to all the mentors, the incredible teachers, the elders across the country, the post-secondary institutions, all the loving people who've donated to the campaign, who've been supportive, who reminded me about what's important to them. And it's about water. Water is life. Every single economic system that runs our province is rooted in water. and gas, nitrogen, hydrogen, all of it, agriculture, irrigation, all rooted in water, which is why foundationally, all of the policies I build are around water and how we govern ourselves. I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful you're here, and I look forward to having a rigorous debate with my colleagues. Hi, hi, Nanaskamun.
Thank you, Jody. Kathleen Ganley, please step forward. You have 90 seconds.
In the first big debate we had of this race, Jody Callahan Stonehouse had to speak first. She grabbed the microphone and commanded the attention of the audience with wit and with grace. I saw what strength looked like. When we were in government, I was lucky enough to have the office next to Sarah Hoffman. She had a challenging file, and she made difficult decisions every single day. I saw what strength looked like. In 2010, two big names were running against each other for mayor of Calgary. I begged my sister to drive me to the poll between classes to vote for a third candidate, Nahid Nenshi, because he had an incredible vision for our city. And I saw what strength looked like. I have learned so much from each of the individuals standing on this stage. Mostly, I have learned that strength comes in multiple forms. So why should I be chosen to lead this incredible team? Because I know where we came from. I know that the hope we have today was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of the last decade. Because I know where we are. I know the strength of this incredible team. And I know where we have to go, that we have to put forward a concrete vision for Albertans. Whatever brought you to this party, I am building an incredible team. And today, I'd like you to join it.
Thank you, Kathleen. Sarah Hoffman, you're next. You have 90 seconds.
May 24th, 2015, I stood on the steps of the legislature. I looked out and saw my mom. She was sitting up front, at that time in a wheelchair. She'd just been discharged from the Royal Alex minutes earlier with a brand new hip and a huge smile on her face. She was there to watch her daughter be sworn in as Alberta's first NDP health minister. There were thousands more behind you. Many of you are here today, but the truth is we haven't gathered in numbers like that in joy since that day. Many of you have been at protests with me or picket lines, but we need to create that opportunity for all of us to gather on those steps in joy again. So I love winning, and I know that when we win, we can do so much more. We can have a government led by a proud new Democrat who's excited to welcome working people, activists, and women to be a part of that NDP government. We can tour this province together, as we have for the last decade, talking to people, and you've told me when we've been doing this work that health, climate, and housing need to be a key focus of our next NDP government. And I want you to leave here today excited to volunteer and vote for our leader who has an exciting, bold plan, one that includes solutions on those three key issues. Because when we celebrate together at the Ledge next time, and I know we will in 2027, I don't want it to be just about stopping bad. I want it to be about us doing great things together, filled with hope and filled with purpose. So join me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all candidates for their opening remarks. We now head to you, the audience, with your questions. We have 4 members standing by with questions developed to invoke deep and thoughtful responses. One candidate will be selected to respond first to the question, and then all candidates will share 4 minutes to answer the question.
Our first question comes from Beatrix Scherner from Wetaskiwin. Go ahead and ask your question, Beatrix.
Thank you. I am absolutely thrilled. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that there are more than 85,000 Albertans who bought or renewed their NDP membership. As a retired United Church minister, I know the importance and difficulty of satisfying a congregation of widely diverse theologies and opinions. enlarged membership potentially has wide-ranging viewpoints from possible disaffected conservatives to those considered politically left. How do you propose to keep this big tent united?
Thank you for your question. I'm going to direct that question first to Sarah. Please start us off with your response. Then we move into a free flow portion of the debate. In the interest of being equitable, I may have to jump in to give everyone a chance to have their say. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Serena, and thank you, Beatrix, for the important question. And certainly, many people bought memberships who'd never bought one in our party before, but even more voted for us in the last election. So the first step was voting for us. The second step is buying a membership, but there's so much more involved in deep engagement with the party. Many of you who are here have knocked on doors, have volunteered, have made phone calls, who have donated, who've been monthly donors, which are the more than 8,000 people who are members on January 1st. Over 8,000 people give money every single month. So finding ways to have all of them feel excited and hopeful, working with the local riding associations to build deeper relationships with all of those new members, and making sure that they feel included, welcome, and excited about a bold platform and a bold vision for government.
Okay.
And I would add to that what's really important is looking at the fundamentals of what we agree on. Protecting our CPP is essential. Looking after our senior citizens, our schools, our hospitals. There are so many things that we align and agree on that we have to stay focused on. How do we build Alberta's prosperity so that we can build our schools and hospitals to be thriving?
You know, Beatrix, first of all, thank you for that question, and thank you for your seva, for your service to the community over all this time. And I think fundamentally that seva, that service, is what we need to build on together. So I am one of those new members. And there have been many others who have come with. And I think what's really important for us is for us to be incredibly disciplined, number one, on being welcoming, on ensuring that people find a home here, on not saying, well, you weren't around when, and ensuring that we're building the movement. Number two, not resting on our laurels. 85,000 is amazing. The provincial Alberta NDP is probably the largest provincial political party of any stripe in Canada right now. But it's not nearly enough. In Fort McMurray, in the two ridings of Fort McMurray, we have barely 200 members put together. So we have to be able to build the movement even further by being even more welcoming. And I think the third and most important piece is to ensure that we're listening.
Move on to candidate Ganley, please.
Yeah, I get to go last, so I guess I get to do the thing that we all do, which is to say I agree with everything that has been said. What I would add to that is that I think it's incredibly exciting that we have built a big tent, and I want to thank you so much for that question. As we move forward, we have to ensure that everyone feels included. Yes, absolutely, but we have to balance that. And that's what makes it both exciting and challenging at the same time, is that we have to balance it against our fundamental values. We cannot lose where we came from, our commitment to public health care, our commitment to ensuring that every child has an education, and our commitment to things like what we did in government, cutting child poverty in half, or this time, ending it. Thank you. How do I think we do that? I think we do it by ensuring that we have those difficult conversations, that we have a space for our members to come together, and that's exactly what my members' charter is about. Thank you.
Speaking of one of those values, I want to touch on, and it's really important to me that people can afford to pay their rents. And some people have asked us about rent control. And I am proudly in support of us making sure that during this housing crisis, we bring in a Peter Lougheed-style rent control and build a mass amount of affordable housing. I'd love to hear where my colleagues on this stage stand on rent control.
Big tent, big dreams, big opportunities. We have big transformation and big work to do, and it's going to take all of us to lift. If we move towards a net zero, carbon-free economy, we need everyone, all of our workers, all of our citizens working together. The big tent's the big opportunity to make change.
And I think that rent caps are a really important part of what has to be a very broad affordable housing strategy, including affordable housing
Thank
both
you very
just
much,
below market
candidates.
and very low.
We have to move to our second question.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you to the crowd for for not heckling. But just a reminder, we want to give the candidates as much time as they can, so do hold your applause until the end. So right now you can applaud. All right, our second question comes from Jamie Logie from Spruce Grove.
Thank you, Carissa. This is my question. During the last election, I did some door knocking for my NDP candidate in one of the so-called donut ridings surrounding Edmonton. We did not win in what I feel was a winnable riding, in part because there wasn't attention or resources allocated to these important places. I want to know from you as candidates for leadership what you're going to do for these important areas of Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, Leduc, Sherwood Park, and St. Albert.
Candidates?
Thank you for that question, Kathleen. We're going to send that question to you, and then the rest of the candidates can start free flow debate.
Thank you so much, Jamie. That is an absolutely critical question, and I want to thank you for your work that you have done, and I'm sorry that it wasn't successful this time, but I will do everything in my power to make you successful next time. What do I think we do differently? I think it's two things. We still send all those volunteers that we have out to the doors. That was an incredible strength that we had in the last election. But I think overwhelmingly what I hear from those volunteers is that when they got to those doors, they didn't have a clear message on what was most important to people. And that is keeping a roof over their head and food on their table, things most people would describe as the economy. So I think we solve that problem by building the team, by lifting up our local people and relying on their knowledge, but also by giving them a clear offer on the economy to take to those doors so we can tell them more than what's bad about Danielle Smith, but also what's good about us. Thank you.
You know, for the last 4 months, the four of us plus Raki and Gil have been learning a lot of improvisational skills, and the most important improvisational skill is you say yes and. So yes and. So I think there's two things here. One is I've been spending a ton of time with, I hate using the term, but unsuccessful candidates and their volunteers and their campaign people and their EDA volunteers, learning a lot about what they feel. So one of the things you mentioned is very prevalent. We didn't have the resources. The second is what Kathleen is saying, the content was wrong. And the two things that people constantly heard at the doors was, but the economy, and does Jagmeet Singh run your party? And those are things we've got to have answers for. And then the third piece is really around training of the volunteers. I've heard from so many candidates, they were excited to become a candidate and then had no idea how to run a campaign. And I've been well trained in activism and in organizing. I think that we need to spend the next year really training all of our volunteers across the province.
And I want to thank all of the constituency associations, all of the volunteers who did put blood, sweat, and tears. And those doors are hard. Sometimes you hear some really horrible things to your face, and I thank you for getting up and going again. And you have told us repeatedly you felt neglected by us as a party, that you felt abandoned by us. And so that's on us to do better work, to support you, to ensure that we have proper resources, that the messaging reflects what you say, because you know what your constituency needs, and it's our job to lift your voice.
Was it Jamie who asked the question?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. And I'm going to guess you were probably part of Chantel's campaign, and I was really honored to have Chantel introduce me at my launch of my leadership campaign. And she is a fantastic candidate, and I'm excited that I've been out there. We've had events in coffee shops, and we've also gone door knocking in Spruce Grove, Stony Plain. I've done the same in Leduc at the library, and door knocking in Leduc, Beaumont, Sherwood Park, St. Albert. Absolutely making sure that we're reaching into the suburbs is incredibly important to me. I am a kid who grew up in a small town in northern Alberta. Just a couple hundred people live there. And making sure that we break down the divide between the big cities and everywhere else is a key goal of mine as an Albertan, but also as somebody who wants to be the premier. I need to make sure that we are out there working with you and empowering you and giving you something exciting on health, climate, and housing to bring to the doorsteps. Because most people actually, in the seats that we barely lost in Calgary, asked me about rent control, asked me about co-op housing, asked me about affordable housing and permanent supportive housing, and they deserve
Thank you so
better.
much, Sarah. Does somebody want to jump in?
Well, I just think the critical thing is Sarah said, give people something to vote for, which is true. But as progressives, we have a sin that we always commit, which is assuming we're right. And if only people understood how smart we were, they would vote for us. It has to be listening.
I was actually listening to them on the doorsteps.
Creating with the people in the communities a platform that they believe in
Thank you,
based on our
candidates.
values.
We have to move on to the next question.
Thank you. And you folks did a pretty good job there of not clapping. If you've ever done twinkling, it was a successful thing we did in NDYA. So if you really like something someone's saying, keep twinkling.
What does
And
that mean?
John Carpenter, do you want to twinkle for me? Because you just twinkle with your fingers. There we go. John just did it. The third question comes from John Carpenter, and you can ask your question now.
When the Alberta NDP were in government, they cut child poverty in half. The UCP government continues to ignore the growing number of poor and unhoused in our communities. Our NDP values means we have a province for all, not just the rich. What are your plans to ensure all of Alberta is part of our prosperity?
Thank you for that question. We're going to head to Jody to start us off with her response and then move into free flow debate.
Thank you, John Carpenter, for that very important question. 1 in 3 Albertans are using the food bank, which is unacceptable in the richest province in the country. So how do we transform the poverty into prosperity? Well, it starts by creating jobs, which is why transforming our economy to a resilience economy around carbon zero emissions, we have to do the work. We have 177,000 orphan wells. Let's turn that into economy, into a job. There are so many things. We just lost the TransAlta wind turbines, we lost that bid. That would have been jobs to help families. We also lost the largest in Canada carbon capture site that was going to be brought here to Edmonton, and we lost that, which means we have to double down on renewables, create jobs, and as well as spend the royalties wisely. When oil is over $70 a barrel, we need to make sure that gets in the hands of hardworking Albertans to reduce the poverty, to ensure that affordability is in our hands. We have to build houses. We have to build wraparound services for folks who are hard to house. That is incredibly important.
Jody, I couldn't agree more. My campaign is focused on exactly that, building an economy that works for everyone, because right now, people are feeling left behind. When I talk to young people, what they tell me most commonly is they don't think they'll ever afford a house. So there's a couple of pieces to this. One is we have to drive up wages because they aren't keeping pace with costs. The second is we have to drive down costs. I have a number of concrete proposals on that, from public auto insurance to ending price gouging in the electricity system. Another one is we need a big investment in housing. The UCP caught all investment in affordable housing about 5 years ago, and we see the results on our streets around us every day. So it will take investment, but it also takes an eye on the prize, making sure the economy, our prosperity, goes to everyone. Thanks.
Sure. So my 3 key pillars are health, climate, and housing, as you've heard. And housing I landed on because it is the biggest affordability pressure facing pretty much every household in the province of Alberta. It doesn't matter if I'm up in Grimshaw talking to folks about how they haven't had a new build up there in decades, or whether I'm in Edmonton talking to Marlon Schmidt about a path to get his kids out of his basement. Everyone deserves an opportunity to have a safe, affordable home to live that makes them all proud. He loves living with his kids. It's a joke we have. So I want to make sure that we all have opportunities to have an affordable, dignified place to live. And it also extends to people who are living rough on our streets. It brings me shame as an Albertan to see how many people are unhoused and are struggling, have no access to health care or a safe place to live at night. These are NDP values, and they stretch beyond our party to ordinary voters, and giving them hope around how affordability and housing are tied to a strong Alberta and a strong economy needs to be fundamental, and something that I think we can all be really excited about talking to our friends and neighbors about in the next election.
I grew up in deep poverty, and when I first became mayor, my first major project was to launch Canada's first community anti-poverty plan. It's called Enough for All. And the first line of that plan is, my neighbor's strength is my strength. And it talks about how poverty is everyone's problem, but we have to approach it in a number of ways. So as Kathleen has said, income is important. Ensuring people have adequate wages is important. Being the party of affordability is important. We also have to ensure that income supports are in place. The reason the NDP was able to cut child poverty in half was largely because of the Canada Child Tax Credit. So we have to ensure our tax system works in that way. Housing is critical as a piece of affordability, but we also have to look at income supplements, and we have to tell ourselves the truth, which is we've designed a system of income inequity, even in the healthcare system. We've designed a system that only works because of a seemingly inexhaustible supply of mostly racialized women who work for far below their market value. And we have to figure out how to redesign the system so it is just and fair for everyone.
And we have to scale what works. Habitat for Humanity works. Food co-ops works. Scale what works.
Thank you so much, candidates. We have a fourth and final question from the audience.
Well, Shamanthi Kure has the fourth question. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon. As a strong labor activist, my question is, when Gil McGowan was running for the leadership, his focus was on adding workers to the voting coalition that supports the NDP and winning back the members who left. How would you support and retain those workers and work with your labor movement?
Thank you so much for your question. Ahead, please start us off and the other candidates can respond.
Thanks so much for that question. And you know, my record as mayor in working with the labor movement was one where, as I always said, you don't always get everything you want, but it is always an environment of deep respect for working people. And if you ask any of my 15,000 colleagues at the City of Calgary, they'll tell you that I never gave a speech where I did not thank public servants for their work. I'm deeply proud of having the endorsement of the Building Trades Association of Alberta for my pro-labor policies. And I think Gil is right that as a membership base, we really are losing out on working people, particularly young men. And we have to figure out how to build a broader tent so that people can see that the NDP stands for prosperity for everyone and for the ability of everyone to succeed, to have a dignified life, and have a future for their kids and for their grandkids. And that means being not just the party of educated elites, not just the party of seniors, we love them all, but ensuring that our appeal is to everyone.
Workers are the heartbeat of our province, whether they are in the oil and gas sector or in hospitals or in school being assistants to teachers. Workers are the essence of who we are. It is our responsibility as government to negotiate with unions and to understand what the needs of the workers are, and that's exactly what I'll do.
Do you want to go, Kathleen?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just say that saying thank you is absolutely important, but even more important than that, in my experience, is respecting the work that's done by the public service and make sure that we're growing it, making sure that we protect and don't privatize those jobs, making sure that we honor collective agreements and find ways to make it easier for people to organize. I've been asked by a number of people, particularly in the building trades, around bringing back the card check process, and I am absolutely committed to that and to actually making it the standard that we have in Manitoba and other provinces across the country, making sure it's easier for people to join a union, to increase their wages, to have a safer work environment and a greater opportunity to come home at the end of the day. And we also need to see a significant increase to the minimum wage, but it needs to be paired with housing, because if we just increase minimum wage but don't invest in public housing, people will just continue to pay more out of pocket to corporate landlords who are getting richer without us actually investing in one another and making sure that the money that's going into their paycheck stays in their pocket. So I'm very excited to work with labor leaders and frontline workers. I've been on pickets much of my life. My parents were both teachers, and I grew up respecting the role of collective agreements and collective bargaining and collectivism, because when we work together to support one another, we all do better.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I think it's actually fundamental to our success going forward, and I just want to take this minute to thank Gil McGowan for his incredible contributions to this race. It was... we can pause for that. It was, such an addition to this race, because Gil is absolutely right. If you look at the demographics, we lost working people. I believe that's because we don't talk about the thing that's most important to them. So in the last election, we talked a lot about what Danielle Smith was doing wrong, and we were right about that. We talked a lot about some things that were important to us, and we were right about those too. But we have to be willing to listen to people, to what's important to them. And for most people, it's that their wages aren't keeping up with their costs, with their mortgage, with their rent, with their grocery bill. So we need to talk about those things.
And we need strong industrial policy so we can grow the workers. We need to be able to grow that sector and support them and make sure that they have the needs, that double breasting is ended, that is no longer continued.
Exactly.
Yes, that we have to do what is right for our workers and make sure we are standing with them in negotiations and invite investors so we can grow. We can no longer have this divide between Canada and Alberta. Investors outside of Alberta do not understand this tension. So we have to make sure that we have strong policy so that investors can invest in our workers.
Exactly. I'd add card check to that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll move to the next question.
Thank you, audience members, for your thoughtful questions. It's now time for us as moderators to ask the questions. We will pose a question to each candidate, and the candidate will have 1 minute to respond, followed by 2.5 minutes of open debate with the rest of the leadership candidates. Our first question: you have each presented platforms making the case why you would be the best leader for the party. Many voters are evaluating your responses and deliberating who has the best chance of winning the next general election to become the next premier. Perhaps the question for many today is, what sets you apart as the one to beat Danielle Smith and the UCP? Jody, please start us off. You have 60 seconds, and then we move to open debate for 2.5 minutes.
What sets me apart to grow the party is that I'm bringing new people to our party, young people to our party, First Nations, Indigenous, Métis, people who've never seen themselves reflected in New Democrat values, because Alberta's values are New Democrat values, and New Democrat values are Alberta's values. And I have the potential to grow the party, not just to beat Danielle Smith, not just for the next 4 years of government, so that we have 12 consecutive years to clean up the mess that the UCP has made. It is going to take rolling up our sleeves, getting our hands dirty, and cleaning up the mess to ensure that our CPP is there for our elders and for our old ones, to ensure that the homes are safe for those who are vulnerable and need safe housing, to ensure that our children are getting adequate school, that they have the counselors, the therapists, the TAs, the RAs, all the things they need. We are the richest province in the country. We need to have institutions of excellence, whether they're post-secondary or healthcare, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Thank you so much, Jody, and thank you to everyone on the stage for the incredible work they have done. It is a result of this race and all of us that we have grown the party so much. What do I think sets me apart? It's the two things I'm running on. The first is that I'm offering a different type of leadership, one that's based not on the strength of one individual alone, but on the incredible strength of the entire team. I have been working with and building that team over the past decade, and I am so proud to stand on the stage with these incredible people and with all of my colleagues in the legislature. The second is that I think what we need to do going forward is put forward a clear message on the economy. It's not enough just to attack Danielle Smith. We have to talk about what's most important to people. We have to tell them how we will build an economy that works for them so that they can afford their lives.
I'm so grateful for the three of you for opening my eyes to so much, and to Gil and to Raki and to David going through this. I'm grateful to the 9 MLAs that have endorsed me in helping me understand a lot about this. But I am also coming at this one with fresh eyes, and I think those fresh eyes are important. I am very proud to stand on my record of listening, of bringing people together, of helping people understand that there is something better out there, that we can build community together through our own service, through our own seva. That's really what I stand for. And if elected, I will take us into that next election, building that movement of Albertans such that our election becomes almost inevitable, because people see themselves reflected, their values reflected in this party, and most important, in these tough times where we all feel beaten down by government and by forces in the world, to give people a sense of optimism and a sense of hope. We live here because we love it here, and we have to build on that.
I'm so proud to see Ray Martin out in the audience, somebody that I had the honor of working with when I was staff and he was an MLA, when I was a coworker with him at the school board, and volunteering on a number of his campaigns. I think what probably sets me apart, frankly, is I don't think anybody has knocked on more doors other than Ray Martin for me, than me for the NDP. I have been working with many of you to build this party over decades, and I'm so proud of that. I was there with Rachel when we saw the breakthrough in 2015, and I want to make sure we're only 1,300 votes away from seeing it happen again, and I want us to ensure that we do it, and that we do it with purpose, that we're not just voting to stop bad things, but we're voting to do great things, and we can do it as proud New Democrats.
Thank you for that. So this is my first question. I get two. You've talked about how you would unite or bridge members from diverse ideological perspectives. And this is a huge part of what I see the leader needs to do if we are to be an even bigger Big Tent party. But from my observation working in the Premier's office, as well as in the NDP caucus, the leader is the head of a caucus filled with independent and diverse MLAs. They're the boss of staff, a member of party executive. A big part of the role of leader is building the culture of our party and its various teams. What does good organizational culture mean to you? And how would you as a leader build this culture within the various teams as well as the party's organization as a whole?
Ned, I think
Nahed, I'm going to throw that to you.
I was just waiting to be invited. Thank you. Organizational structure is actually my area of professional expertise. It's what I've done for a living outside of politics, and it's something that I've really had to build around Calgary City Council. And probably the most touching moment for me in this race, before I entered this race, was when one member of Calgary City Council, a very right-wing guy who I fought with all the time, unbidden, wrote a letter to the Calgary Herald saying, "I've served on 75 boards and committees, and I've never had a leader like Nahed before. Even though we disagreed on so many things, he made me better, and he works with me to make me better." And the conversation I've had with members, with EDA presidents, and with caucus members is always the same. Sometimes the leader has to have judgment. Sometimes the leader has to see the big picture, and always the leader has to make decisions for the party. But what I can guarantee to everyone is you'll be heard, you'll have a fair hearing, you'll have the opportunity to understand why decisions are being made, and you will always be a part of that decision making.
Thank you, Nahed. That goes now to open debate for 2.5 minutes.
One of the things I'm really proud of in this leadership race is that I've been able to be super open about who I am and where I stand on key issues. And I want the caucus and I want any future candidates to know that we're going to do bold, meaningful things on health, climate, and housing. I'm confident that our current caucus would find one of those pillars that they're really excited to each be engaged in and help bring forward great ideas to move them forward. I'm also really open about the fact that I grew up in public education, and I believe that public funding should go to public, Catholic, and Francophone schools. If charter and private schools want to become public schools, there's absolutely space for them within that. But I want to make sure that we're living those values in a really open way. And when you choose the leader, you know where you stand on those key things that are important to you. And then, of course, we will work together to fill in the other spaces. But I think now is our chance, friends, to ask those key questions either today or in the days to come before we vote to make sure that our leader shares our values and that we can be excited about where we're going in the future.
It's about leading with love. We have such an extraordinary team of MLAs who have a various experience experts. We have a neurosurgeon, doctor. We've got folks from oil and gas. We have so many folks who are compassionate, empathetic, kind, thoughtful. And not only our MLAs, but our CAs and our caucus. We have the Indigenous caucus, the Rural caucus, the LGBTQT caucus. We have so many brilliant people whose voices need to be lifted. It's about the lift we do in leadership. It's about sharing the authority so that we govern collectively.
Yeah, and I want to start, I think, with where we are, which is to say we have to acknowledge that we haven't always done the best job of this in the past, and we can definitely improve. So to anyone who's ever felt excluded, I am sorry, and we will do a better job, any of us, I think, in the future. So I think the first important thing is that we build it together. That is what my members' charter is about. I have a very specific policy on this because I have heard from a lot of people that they didn't always feel like there was a process for their voice to be recognized, whether they were from our caucuses or whether they were from EDA presidents. So that's a really big part of it. I think another thing that's worth recognizing is that we have to build a movement. We have to find a way to do our debate a little bit better so that it brings us together instead of apart. I think we should also focus on having members-only events so that everyone can feel like they're part of the team and they have something to contribute, and we can all build that economic vision, that vision for the future together.
Thank you, candidates.
Thank you so much. Now on to our next question. As a city, Edmonton has historically strongly supported the NDP. How do you intend to ensure the capital city continues to be heard, even as the party turns to other areas of the province to gain the votes needed for a majority government? Sarah, please take 60 seconds to answer, and the others can jump in after.
Thanks so much, Serena. I am very proud to be an Edmonton MLA, having represented Edmonton Glenora since 2015 and served on the Edmonton Public School Board. Nahed and I were actually elected in the same election in 2010, and having been the chair for much of that time as well. Edmonton is an amazing city, and it is an important part of who we are as Albertans. I grew up, though, in small town Alberta, in Canuso, a village of just 200 people, about 3 hours north of here. I love spending time on the road, and one of the things you may have seen when I launched my campaign is I launched it here in Edmonton, in my riding, with many of you there, and it was such an exciting day. Thank you for being there. But then I got on the road, and I went to Calgary and Medicine Hat and Lethbridge and Grand Prairie and Peace River and Grimshaw and Fairview and Valley View. It's important that we are out and we are building and that we're bringing that great energy to help us connect with ridings right throughout this province. But doing things like actually following through on what the NDP started, building the important South Edmonton Hospital,
Thank you so
needs
much,
to be a
Sarah.
top priority.
Whether it's Edmonton, Calgary, or any of our small, beautiful towns or villages, it all comes down to Wahkotuwin, the way in which we govern ourselves, the way in which we have relationships with each other. It's about the reciprocity, the listening, the acting on your behalf. So whether you're Edmonton or small town, it is our job to represent you.
And let's be clear, our current government does not believe that big cities should exist. They do not believe in supporting the big cities. And in my time as mayor, I had 6 premiers, always advocating for what the cities needed. And I've been so happy to be welcomed. I've had great relationships with all Edmonton mayors, but I've been so happy to be so warmly welcomed by the people of Edmonton. I did not expect 1,100 people packing the Polish Hall 2 weeks into this debate. And I've heard a lot about the things that Edmonton needs. Investments in better public transit, a real focus not just on enforcement, but on social disorder, on mental health and addiction. That's where I come from in Calgary. Of course, building the South Edmonton Hospital. No, Premier Smith, people in South Edmonton are not so close to Red Deer that they can go there for their medical treatments. And focusing on the needs of a big, vibrant city that attracts investments and attracts people from around the world. We need an urban concept in the mayor's office, particularly one focused on the needs of this city.
And I will admit it, I am an MLA from Calgary. I do have the opportunity to live up here during session. And for those of you who don't know, I was actually born in Edmonton while my dad was completing his PhD. How do we ensure that Edmonton continues to be well represented? Well, I wish there was some magic beans to this, but I really think it's the same as anywhere else. It's listening and it's hard work. It's getting out there and talking to people. People on the doors are volunteers who give their blood, sweat, and tears to build this party. You are the people who know what your city needs. You know what your neighbors need. You're immersed in it. You talk to them every day, and that's how we do it. Fortunately, we have a lot of MLAs from Edmonton who are incredibly well immersed in their community and who will bring forward and advocate for those needs every day.
And like many, I moved to Edmonton to pursue post-secondary, and we need to ensure that this world-class University of Alberta has the academic freedom and the funding from the provincial government to be able to achieve their full goals and their potential.
And the
Many of us
Edmontons
have
I've met will not let us forget. Trust me on that.
Thank you so much, candidates. This next question has been touched on a little bit, but we'll spend a bit more time talking about it directly. So the NDP is a national brand recognized across Canada. We're known for our values like promoting the rights of workers, fairness and equality, but each provincial party, whether we're governing in Ontario, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC, or even here in Alberta, every party is slightly different. When elected Premier, what will your Alberta NDP government look like in 2027? And what will your relationship with the NDP's national brand look like? Kathleen, you have 60 seconds to respond, and then we'll move to our final 2.5-minute debate.
Absolutely. And I think, when we talk about building our party and our movement, this is a question that is fundamental and that is central. So I think personally, and many of you in this room probably agree, I share a lot of values in common with our federal New Democrats. I care about pharmacare, I care about dental care, I care about ensuring that we're protecting the rights of workers. We don't always agree on everything. Sometimes we don't agree so much on energy policy, for instance. And what that means is that we have people throughout this province, volunteers, members, people who are dedicated to this party, who both feel that this is a party that is a family, and people who feel that being attached to the federal party has an impact not only on our electoral success, but their safety. Ultimately, this is a question for the membership of the party, and I would let party members have that debate, because I think that that is what respect looks like, recognizing that there's different views and honoring them.
Thank you, Kathleen. Now open debate, 2.5 minutes.
Agreed. This is a discussion for the membership, for our caucus, for our MLAs. We do have to flesh out the conversation. What is our party? How are we related? What are our values? And are they the same as the federal party? And we have to be able to have some difficult discussions and then make a decision collectively. It's about all of us and how we make that decision. And, you know, insofar as our values, of course we care about pharmacare, as Kathleen pointed out. Of course we want to make sure there's affordable housing. Of course we care about citizens, about Albertans. And yes, we differentiate on Alberta's energy policy, and that's where we're going to have the hard discussion as we move forward in diversifying our economy in the next phase.
You know, the Alberta NDP has to look like Alberta, and we have to reflect Alberta citizens. You've heard me say that before. This is probably one of the areas where you will have a little bit of disagreement between the four of us on stage on how we move forward, particularly in our relationship with the federal party. And that's okay. That healthy disagreement is exactly what makes us a powerful movement. If you're going to be cold-hearted about it, the math says that we cannot succeed unless people who vote for every party federally vote for the NDP provincially. And we have to be able to be attractive to folks who may not want to cast their ballot for the federal NDP. And I must tell you that in every single town hall, every single meeting, every single coffee party I've been to, every single one, long-term members of the NDP say to me, the federal NDP is a drag on us. Now, things have changed. We are now the largest provincial NDP chapter in the country. We have the ability to influence the federal party in a way that we might not have before. My opinion is pretty clear. I want to be in control of our own destiny and not tie ourselves to people whose values we may not share. But as Kathleen and Jody have said, the decision is for the members. But if every member is asking, if every member is asking this question, we must surface this question.
Sorry, we haven't heard from Sarah yet.
That is technically absolutely true. Nobody can make this decision on their own. But there's one color I don't have to explain to anybody in this room, and that's what orange stands for, because it does stand for public health care. It does stand for making sure that we protect each other, that we're building the CPP, that it stands for justice and protecting one another. I'm proud of where the federal party stands on many, many issues, and there are things where I am not proud, and I will tell them, because we are a family. I am also excited about the fact that when people run into Carla Peck, the leader of the Saskatchewan NDP, they take a selfie and text it to me because they're excited to know that I know her and we're building something for Prairie New Democrats together.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you, candidates.
Now, the candidates here have crisscrossed the province, selling memberships, door knocking on thousands of homes, meeting members to try to win hearts and votes. Many of you may have heard their platforms and pitches. In this new segment, each candidate has 30 seconds to pose a question to all of the other candidates. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the question, and then we start this segment with a wrap-up and then a 1-minute rebuttal. Candidate Kathleen, you have the first question. Go ahead with your question to the other candidates.
One of the most important qualities of a leader is the ability to admit you're wrong and apologize. Our current premier can't do this. When we were in government, we didn't want to regulate street checks without input from many cultural communities. But we asked the wrong questions, so we didn't get it done. I have apologized for that. What is one mistake you have made in public office, and will you apologize for it today?
Who would like to take that question?
Not for me, that question. Oh, Kathleen. Well, what I will say is when I was on the Edmonton Police Commission, I put forward race-based data collection, and I didn't substantiate why it was so critical to collect race-based data and how we can make better decisions in supporting communities. And in fact, what it did is it caused more harm. And so I regret my communication, and I regret the way I brought that forward, because it did cause further harm to the notion of collecting race-based data. Thanks for the question, Kathleen.
Go ahead.
Sure. So one of the things that we ran on in 2015 was making sure we stopped the privatization of our public lab system here in Alberta and in northern Alberta. And I was very excited to take that charge on. I had been elected previously, as I mentioned, I was the chair of the school board, but I hadn't been elected provincially. So I spent a lot of that first year talking to lawyers, figuring out how far the contract had gone, how we could get out of it, how we could make sure that we were using evidence to drive the decision and not just a promise that we'd made to the electorate. It was a promise. It wasn't just ideology, it was a commitment we made in that platform. I wouldn't take a year next time. Because the truth is, when we run on something, we have a mandate to act on it quickly. And it took us a year to get out of that contract, and then it took us 2 more years to sign contracts with developers, and then we were already under process of building that new public lab here in Edmonton. And even though it was quite a ways down the process, the UCP paved over the hole, put sod over top, and we ended up with the crisis that we saw when COVID hit and our labs were in disaster. Because I've had a chance to serve at the cabinet table, because I've had a chance to be a part of a provincial government, an NDP government, I am ready to hit the ground running. So if you give me a mandate as your premier to act on bold things like finishing the South Edmonton Hospital, making sure we build that public lab, making sure that we're expanding midwifery services, which we did, but even further in rural Alberta than we did before, I'm going to hit the ground running and we're going to do great things together. So my problem is that I took too long to get going on the things that are really core to who we are as New Democrats, and I'm not going to get that problem next time.
11 years. So many mistakes. So many public apologies. Makes me a little different than the premier. But Kathleen, if I can do it in 90 seconds, I'll give you a bonus. I'll give you 3. Because I think those 3 kind of reflect some of the things that have taught me about leadership. The first one people have heard me say a lot is about the Olympics file. Sarah and I worked hard on that file. And I am deeply disappointed with how I managed that file, particularly in our relationships as the city with the provincial and federal governments. We should have been tougher. We should have walked away from the negotiating table when we had impossible demands placed on our citizens, and we should have talked a lot more about the affordable housing benefits of that. And yes, when I watch the Olympics in 2026 in Italy, I will be salty about it. Number 2, when we were asked to create safe consumption in Calgary, supervised consumption, the original plan was to build several supervised consumption sites in the city, and I said no. I said, let's build one, put it at the Shumare, study the heck out of it, have wraparound services available, and then replicate it as needed. This was a terrible mistake. The amount of wraparound services is not that important for supervised consumption, and we centralized the problem in the social disorder. And finally, third, when we had very serious budget problems in 2018, I allowed our council to make a $60 million mid-year budget cut. Never should have done it. I returned the money in November, but it caused a lot of pain.
We're going to go to Kathleen now with 60 seconds.
I think
Well, I want to thank you all for doing that. You know, I think it can seem weird to see a politician apologize, but I think the biggest problem that our current government, well, I mean, they have a lot of problems, don't they? But one of them is an inability to back down. You know, coal mining, it took them forever to back down. Canada Pension Plan, they still haven't backed down. And so I think it's incredibly important for a leader to be able to say, you know, we moved forward and we maybe shouldn't have, and so I'm sorry and I apologize and we'll do it over. Because no one can see, you know, everything that's going to happen on a particular file. So I just want to thank my colleagues for undergoing that exercise. I think it's a really good demonstration of character. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Sarah, it is now your time to ask a candidate question. You have 30 seconds.
Thanks so much, Carissa. I need to ask the question that is absolutely on everybody's minds, because there are tens of thousands of us who have given our time, our talent, and our treasure to our cause. And we're close, but we're not there yet. We've seen a lot of talent over this series, and when we win tonight, we're going to be in the final round for the Stanley Cup playoffs. You're all going to need to wear a jersey, so I want to know which Oilers jersey are you going to wear, which players, and why?
Well, for me, Sarah, I would have to admit that it's Grant Fear. I have deep respect. I love Grant, You know, he came from Spruce Grove, small town boy, but he was a black man in the NHL when there were very few. If not, he was the only one. And he was also brave, and he came out and stood and talked about his addiction, and he was humble, and he gave back to community and mentored what leadership looks like when you are down, when you are low, and when you make mistakes, and he did that. So my deep admiration and respect goes to Grant Fuhr. That's not fair.
Sorry. First of all, let me apologize to Jody. I thought I would sneak away quietly as you were hearing, but I heard that wonderful response about how hockey can be inclusive and it can be for everyone. It is going to be very, very hard for me to support the Edmonton Oilers in the fall. However, as I said in one of my videos, you know, I grew up in the 1980s in Calgary and in Red Deer County. And as such, I had a grudging respect for the Oilers, but here's the true story. I'm a huge Oilers fan. Always have been.
I'm telling Calgary.
And this is my ancient jersey that I've been wearing for many, many, many years. Oh, the price tag is still on it. Unlike the current government, I'm not a great liar. But what I have learned is the incredible spirit of this community, the incredible spirit of that extraordinary group of young men about why we play La Bamba after every victory. And it is time for that cup to come back to Canada, and I will proudly wear my McDavid jersey.
Kathleen?
So, like Nahed, I am not a particularly good liar, so I will have to admit to you all that I am a bit of a geek. So I spend a little more time playing Zelda than I do watching hockey. That being said, it has been amazing to see this city come alive. I had the opportunity to go and watch the game outside the game just the day before yesterday, and it was just the spirit in the city and the incredible upliftingness was phenomenal. I have managed to take a couple of pictures in my friend Heather's jersey because she's been nice enough to lend it to me. She's an MLA up here in Edmonton. So I am very, very excited for you all, but I have to admit I don't own a hockey jersey of any type because I am very fearful that were I to wear it while knocking on people's doors, someone might ask me a question about hockey and it would become immediately evident that I was pulling a con.
Thank you, Kathleen. And Sarah, Sarah, you have 60 seconds for a rebuttal or response.
I'm very proud to have a Darnell Nurse jersey because he's an amazing defenseman.
Yeah.
He certainly earned his keep in this last game, and I have great confidence that he's going to do a great job for us all tonight. But it's probably time that I add maybe something from the offense, and I have to admit that seeing McDavid and Draisaitl play together, I get so many flashbacks to the glory days with Gretzky and Mess. So I might have to get one of them. But then I do love a good boosh bomb, slap shot, so maybe it should be and then my nephew, Tycho, is a goalie, so he definitely wants me to get a Skinner jersey. And I talked to one of Skinner's teachers last night when I was door knocking, and she said what a great kid he was. The youngest of 9, grew up right here in Edmonton. There are so many amazing players on this team, and I am excited to watch them win tonight and to take us off into the final round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think we'll have a lot of fun bringing us all together and watching and cheering for all of us to see a great victory. So I want so many jerseys, but I'll wear Nurses tonight.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, candidates. Candidate Nahed, it's your turn to ask a question. You have 30 seconds.
Thanks so much. You know, I was going to actually ask the question that Beatrix asked from the audience about what we do with this movement and all of these members, but I'll go a different way. You know, I am quite proud of a lot of things that the Alberta NDP government did from 2015 to 2019. But there were a lot of mistakes, and there were things that I argued with the government on a lot. And so for the two of you who are cabinet ministers, and also for you, Jody, as a keen observer of politics and of the community, what mistakes do you think the party made? And as premier, how would you do things differently?
Well, what comes to mind right away is Bill 6. That really hurt the party, that hurt us. And that was about not listening to the people on the land, the farmers, the ranchers, and spending time. And so what I would do differently, when we are bringing bills forward, it's really critical that we sit with the citizens who it is going to impact. We must learn from the experts, from the community, and from those who have lived experience. And so I would say that is the largest mistake. There were a few subtle ones, but really overall, I think Rachel and the team did an extraordinary job, and I'm very proud to follow her legacy.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of things I'm proud of that we did in government. Our changing of the child tax benefit at both the provincial and federal levels cut child poverty in half. We raised the minimum wage. I'm really proud of that. I think we did a lot of amazing things. We protected healthcare and education in a record economic downturn. What do I think we didn't do so well? We didn't always bring people along. So the Climate Leadership Plan was one of the big things that we did in government, and I think that it was a phenomenal piece of policy. I don't think we did anything wrong there. In fact, we had validators from industry right through to NGOs standing on the stage with us. What we didn't do was bring the people with us. And I think that that was a mistake that we need to correct, because what we did allowed the right to frame us. It allowed them to say, you have to pick between food on your table and actions on climate change. You have to pick between renewables and oil and gas. Nothing can be a yes and conversation. You either are for or you're against. And I think that that has set back action on climate change quite significantly in this country. So if I had it to do over again, I would definitely do that differently. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for the question ahead. And one of those things that I have some sadness about is the fact that we didn't get to having more disaggregated sites. So I'm glad you brought that up around using evidence to help drive decision making. And I would look for the support of all of you in working with our partners, because it was really important to me that when we did bring in harm reduction sites, that we're evidence driven, that we did it with the support of the municipalities that we were doing it with. So there are some times maybe where we might not see eye to eye and maybe not everyone's paying attention to the evidence. So I'd look for all of you to give me some support on how we could have those conversations in a respectful, honoring way, but also get to an evidence-based outcome that I think could be best for all of us. Another one that I touched on already is like just not getting to things quite fast enough. And I think a big part of that is because we were a young government. Only 4 of our cabinet members had been in government, and only 2 of us had served on local governments. 2 had been MLAs, 4 had been MLAs, and 2 had been in part of local governments. So making sure we're not going to have that mistake again, because I'm so excited by the amazing team that we have already of strong candidates and the diverse experience that we have. And I'm very proud, I'm going to toot my own horn for a second, that I've played a key role in doing candidate recruit for our party over the last 3 elections. And I think it's really important that we get out and we have amazing people at the table so that we can all hit the ground running and have strong opportunities to represent local areas, but then act on their needs very, very quickly to make sure that we're bridging those divides. So yeah, I think that my experience in having made some mistakes in the past is going to make sure that we hit the ground running and that we're successful.
Thank you, Sarah. Naheed, you have 60 seconds for a rebuttal or to respond.
Thank you so much for those answers. That shows the quality of the folks we have on this stage. I think those were terrific. And a lot of the things that I think about in terms of my relationships as mayor with the Rachel Notley government from 15 to 19. And let's be clear, Rachel Notley is a once-in-a-lifetime politician. What she was able to do in bringing this party from 4 MLAs to victory and in running that government that, as Sarah points out, started off a little shaky in terms of experience, but bringing in talent and expertise to help run the government, I think, is something that we should all honor. But I think also as leaders, we need to be very open-eyed, because at the end of the day, the biggest thing of that government is, did we win the next election? And so we need to be able to speak out to Albertans, to be able to reflect their values back to them, to not, like this government does, decision-based evidence-making, but actually to focus on evidence-based decision-making, as you say, and to ensure we're working with all of our stakeholders,
Thank you so much,
especially
candidates.
local politicians.
Thank you.
Well, if you've been keeping track, it's Jody's turn to ask your question.
Thank you. Growing up in Onaway, in a small town, I got to work in my grandparents' hardware store. My dad was the chief of the fire department. My mom worked in the insurance office, and my grandparents had a farm where I learned to fish and trap. And I love the rural. I love the people of the rural. I love the connection to the land and the people. Right now, we currently get 1 out of 3 votes from the rural. I want to know, what is your plan and strategy to make that 2 out of 3 votes?
I'm ready.
What?
Kathleen, go ahead.
What a great question that is. And I think that's critical to our path forward, because if we leave ourselves in a position where we only have a very narrow path to victory, that's very dangerous. It's what happened in the last election. And so to widen our path, we have to attract a lot of vote, not just in the rural, but in mid-sized cities as well. I think we do that in 2 main ways. We do that by making sure that we're building our local teams, that we're respecting those local voices, that we're making sure that they feel supported and empowered to do the work that they have to do. We also give them an economic offer to take to the doors. We talk to people about what is most important to them with local folks who they trust, and we engage. And I think that that means that people can see that their values and our values are the same values.
Sure, thanks so much. I love this question because I grew up in Canuso, and I didn't know that already a third of our neighbors voted NDP because we didn't talk about it. At the grocery store, you didn't dare bring up politics, and you definitely didn't put up signs. But when I found out that a third of our neighbors did, I actually felt quite emboldened because I knew that there was a path for us to go from 1/3 to 1/2. And that is absolutely what we need to do. One of the ways that we do that is by making sure that we're out there talking to and recruiting fantastic rural candidates, and I'm very proud of the fact that many have decided to endorse me after this last election. I went door knocking with Landon in Barhead, his hometown, and we had so much fun. I did that when I was door knocking in the north recently. We were all together in Athabasca, and then I left Athabasca. I went and door knocked in Slave Lake and Canuso. I stopped in Jussard briefly, door knocked in High Prairie. We went to Grand Prairie and had a debate, and then the next day I door knocked in Whitecourt and in Barhead. And being able to go door to door with somebody who grew up in that town, who'd run for us in that town, and to talk to people about our vision and our hope for the future was so empowering, not just for us, but for those people we were talking to, because they were excited that they had a leadership candidate there and a fantastic local candidate on their doorstep asking for their vote. Most of us, when people say, why did you join the NDP? The answer is because somebody asked me to. And that's what we need to do in rural Alberta. And we need to give them hope that we're going to ensure that they have affordable homes that they're proud to live in, that they've got a family doctor and a hospital, and that they can absolutely live there without fear that they're going to have to evacuate because of the impacts of climate change.
Thank you, Sarah. Nahed.
Thank you. This is probably the single most important question for all of us. And I know we've all been working hard on what these strategies look like. And I'm very proud to be endorsed, for example, by the former NDP MLA of Peace River, the former NDP LA from Lethbridge, the former NDP MLA from Banff Kananaskis, as well as a number of candidates who ran unsuccessfully in this last election. So very briefly, the rural strategy is complex, but it starts, number one, by not assuming that rural Alberta is one thing. So the neighborhoods around Edmonton and the neighborhoods around Calgary, where we now have thousands and thousands of members, need to be thought of differently than mid-sized cities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, Grand Prairie, Lethbridge. And because, you know, a nurse working at the Red Deer Hospital probably doesn't think of herself as a rural person, or an oil field worker in Fort McMurray probably doesn't think of himself as a rural person. But there are people living truly rural communities who are living in agriculture and ranching and rural economies. And all of them have different needs that I've been learning about. You know, it may be that I've got the funding for the teachers, but I can't attract teachers to live here, for example. So we really have to be able to think about these things differently. We got to show up. And we have to ensure that when we show up, we're supporting our local volunteers and our local candidates. We cannot write off any riding. We need an 87 riding strategy. We've got to help people, we've got to train them, we have to support them, we have to make sure they're loved, and we've got to critically show them how to win elections.
Thank you, Nahed. Jody, you have 60 seconds for a rebuttal or response.
Thank you. Yes, and these are all brilliant and wonderful and will be implemented, but most importantly, we have to sit at kitchen tables and ask those who voted for us, why did you vote for us? And listen and take note. And then why do you think your neighbor didn't vote for us? Listen and take note. And then we have to have those uncomfortable conversations with the neighbors who didn't vote for us and ask them why. And then we take that back to our colleagues, to our caucuses, and we talk about this is what we heard. People don't see themselves reflected in us because of this, this, and this. What are we going to do? What are we going to bring back to those neighbors? And we go back to those kitchen tables and we visit and we listen and we tell them, this is what I heard. Am I right? This is what we're thinking of moving forward. Does this resonate with you? And we do the work that the people want us to do.
Hi.
Thank you, Jody. Well, thank you all for those really thoughtful questions and reflective answers. With that, it's now time for our closing statements and the candidates' final pitch to win your vote. The candidates now have 2 minutes to make their closing statements. Jody, will you step forward?
Yes. Can I get a microphone? Yeah, it's down there.
Well, it's been an incredible few months traveling around our beautiful province with my colleagues. I've learned so much from them and from the people I've had conversations with. It's so precious, the vulnerable conversations. People share their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and it is our responsibility to take those messages and do something with them. And so that's what I did. I took the message of people's fear around climate change. They are worried about the smoke in the air. They are worried about the drought that is headed. They are worried about the cattle, the farms. How are all the ranches going to be able to have irrigation with no water? Which is why we must do better around water. Water is life. Water is prosperity. Prosperity is our future. And our future must be about our children. We have got to do things better in our province. We have got to think about the next 7 generations, exactly like Lougheed did, exactly like the Notleys did, 2 generations of them, and exactly like so many of our predecessors have done. They were always thinking strategically about how we make this place and space better for the next generation. That means improving negotiations with our union workers. That means improving hospitals. That means improving our education for our children, ensuring they have access to everything they need. We have got to stop the use of the food banks and make sure that people have food in their fridges without being demoralized. We have to attempt to deal with the affordability crisis, and the only way we are going to fix these things is through a viable, diversified, sustainable economic system. This is fundamentally how we fix things, and it is going to take all of us to move towards a net zero economy. Hi, nanaskaman.
Thank you so much, Jody. Nahed, will you please step forward and make your closing arguments?
I like to live my life in gratitude. Every morning I wake up and I say, what's good today? And it's been easy these last 4 months because I'm grateful for these wonderful women on stage with me, and I'm grateful for every one of you and the 85,000 members that you represent, the 10,000 people who signed up to volunteer for my campaign. Because this is about a movement. But I need to tell you, friends, the real work starts on June 23rd. We cannot rest on our laurels. This government must be replaced. It must be replaced for the good of our province and for the future of our generations. This is not for fun anymore, but we're going to have some fun. This is really about going out to all of our neighbors, building the movement, making our movement look more like Alberta, making sure that we are relevant from High Level to High Prairie to High River, from Fort McMurray to Fort Macleod, from Lloydminster to Jasper, in Maquasis, in Stony Nakota, in Guyana, in Fort Chip. We have to be relevant everywhere. And our job is to continue this movement and to show Albertans that, yeah, we've been beaten up on, but that is no reason to give up our optimism about what is possible here. I stand for a greener Alberta, a healthier Alberta, a safer Alberta, a smarter Alberta, a more prosperous Alberta, a more affordable Alberta, an Alberta for everyone. You can find out more, of course, on how I stand on my website, but in reality, you've heard me say this before, the slogan of my campaign is For Alberta, for all of us. And it's time for us to stop being against others, to stop being against frontline workers, against vulnerable children, against local politicians. It's time for us to be for each other. And this is our chance, friends, our historic chance to be for Alberta, for all of us.
Thank you, Naheed. Thank you. Sarah, will you step forward and make your closing statements?
I love winning. I used to get up before 7 so I could be in the pool by 8 to swim with my swim club because I loved the opportunity of us working together to do something meaningful and winning. I love winning elections, not just because I'm a competitor, yes I am, but because when we win elections, we enact bold change, meaningful change. We keep schools open and build hundreds more. We protect queer kids. We grow public sector jobs, increase the minimum wage, and respect collective agreements. We stop the harassment of women and staff outside of abortion clinics. We build public hospitals and we stop privatizing healthcare. And we cut child poverty in half. I know my values, and you know them too. I can't pretend to be something that I'm not. I will be a bold, unapologetic NDP premier. We will build public housing and cap rents. We will ensure you all have a family doctor, and we will stop privatizing healthcare and actually expand operating rooms within public hospitals. We will take bold action in addressing climate change by bringing forward a youth climate corps with thousands of amazing union jobs for young people 35 and under to help us address the impacts of climate change and stop it from getting worse. And we will ensure that we have meaningful action to reduce our emissions 35% by 2035. When we show up at the legislature next time to celebrate winning, we won't be there to celebrate voting people out. We will have already done that. I want us to be there with something more exciting, something bold, something meaningful. You all know that I'm not afraid to do a direct ask, so here it goes. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna wake up excited about the future of the party. And I'm gonna put a number 1 next to Sarah Hoffman, and I hope you do too, as the next leader of Alberta's NDP and the next premier of Alberta.
Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Kathleen.
June 23rd. It's the day the next election campaign begins. It's the day we launch our 87-seat strategy. It will be a long campaign, 3.5 years. But we have to start on June 23rd because we need to build a movement, a party that can govern this province not just for the next election, but for decades to come. We do it standing on the shoulders of the past, on the incredible work that has been done over the last decade. We do it by working together, by each one of us adding our strength to the others. And we do it by recognizing the mistakes of the past, that we cannot win only by criticizing the UCP. We must do something much braver. We must put forward our ideas, our vision for this province, and then stand behind it. We combat that old UCP, those lies, by telling them our story, a better story about what we can build together. We win together. And friends, that is why I am offering you a very different type of leadership. One that is based not on the strength of one person, but all of us together. One that is based not on the ferocity of our attacks, but instead on putting forward our ideas and standing behind them. My name is Kathleen Ganley. I am asking for your ideas, for your energy, and for your dreams. But most of all, I am asking for your vote.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I wondered if the audience would like to give them another round of applause.
I think we should all come over here.
Thank you so much. What an energy in the room. Thank you so much. On behalf of myself and Carissa, thank you for watching online this exciting debate. And to all of you here in person, thank you so much.
So just a quick, before you get going, I just want to describe the vote. That is tomorrow. You can begin. So for the members online and in the audience, most of you should have received your ballots by now. Voting begins, as I said, tomorrow, and members can vote by mail. You can vote online. You can vote by telephone. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. All vote ballots need to be received by noon on June 22nd. So when the next leader of the NDP and the premier of this province will be selected. Now, if you want to be part of that exciting time, this is also a reminder to register for the Leadership Premiere Weekend in Calgary. It's happening June 21st and 22nd. On this weekend, we will take time to celebrate Rachel Notley. You can clap if you want there. And yes. And of course, her achievements, and we'll also be announcing and celebrating our new leader. So once again, let's thank, just thank you for coming, and let's thank the candidates one more time.
Okay, we're gonna do a picture?
Okay, let's go get a picture.
Yeah. Oh, sure, yeah. Before the jerseys.